Hey everybody, my name is Josh. Welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. Today we're talking about a real crime story about Mica Miller. There's this pastor called JP Miller. His wife turns up dead. He does this sermon, right, where it's really weird. We're gonna look at it. And at the end of the sermon, he drops a bomb on his congregation, and it is exploding right now, the story. And there's this hashtag called Justice for Mica Miller. And we're gonna look at the story. We're gonna take a look at it from a point of an ex-pastor's point of view as well, because I know how churches run. I worked in them for many years. I have an insight that a lot of people don't have into these churches. This church is being protested. There's so much going on with the story, so let's take a look at it. So as I was doom scrolling the other day, this kept coming up. I kept seeing Mica Miller pop up all the time. And Robbie Starbuck, who I've had on the show before, has this thread on Twitter. And it says, "We need to talk about Mica Miller. She was married to South Carolina pastor John Paul Miller, but filed for divorce before being found dead from a gunshot wound at a state park. John Paul gave an entire sermon where he talked about how handsome and how great he is before telling the church in the final minute that she was dead. He told the church not to discuss her death and had the gall to even disparage her in death as she was mentally ill. And had the gall to even disparage her in death as mentally ill. It's clear that's not how everyone saw her based on the countless posts from churchgoers standing up for her honor now. A friend says her tires had been recently slashed, she had found trackers in her car, and was working to make a new life. Family and friends do not believe she shot herself. Not only is all this bizarre, but as an adult, this pastor reportedly met his wife when she was 14. So there's allegations of him grooming her. They got married, she was 14, that's when he met her, he was 30. Yeah, it's grooming. She had recently made posts alluding to abuse she experienced. Some of the videos I posted here from his sermon speak to his mental state, and they were very concerning. I think his dad's legal issues are worth noting as well. John Paul's father, also a pastor, exposed himself to a male undercover cop at a state park. What's with the state park and the crime here in this family? He was charged with lewdness and prostitution, but entered in a pretrial intervention program, getting his record expunged before later running a Bible college. Okay. The apple sounds like it doesn't fall far from the tree. Also, odd that it happened in a state park just like Mica's death. He was also accused by wives of multiple Bible college students of making sexual advances on their husbands. This is giving Jody Hildebrand, right? Everybody, you hearing that? The allegations don't end there either. Again, John Paul gave an entire sermon, which included him joking around about how handsome and great he is before telling the church she died, and then felt it was okay to call her mentally ill. Something smells seriously rotten here. I don't see a young woman shooting herself in a state park. That sounds like where killers in a Dateline episode take their victim before haphazardly trying to stage it as a suicide. Christians must speak up in this case because the immoral behavior of this family is exactly what scares some people away from the church and Jesus. Whether he's involved in her death or not, his behavior is entirely immoral. The more people see us standing up to do the right thing, the more comfortable they will be trying church and opening their heart to Jesus. God loves justice. We would all get the word out so Mica Miller can get the justice he deserves. Anyone else find this story disturbing? What do you think? And so he's going to post a couple videos here. Let's watch this.
Their phone rings. Well, the way they do it for some years now, they just do this. Their phone rings, and they just put up their ear. What is it? And it's the answer to their miracle. Whatever the results of the test came back. We were so sorry, we got it wrong. You don't have cancer. Or the lottery. You just won the lottery, whatever it is.
And let me, before we're watching the sermon of the day he does this, so let me be clear as a person who was a pastor. Ex-pastor. If your wife, even your ex-wife, or anything kind of remotely like this would ever happen to any leadership inside your church, first of all, the church leadership says, no, you're taking a step away because clearly there's issues here. You're divorcing, which is already bad enough as a pastor, okay, because just bad, okay? It's not like she was cheating on you or anything like that. If you're divorcing amicably under like whatever he decided to say that they were divorcing for, doesn't matter. Churches don't allow for that kind of stuff. Cheating, if your husband's cheating on you, if he's got addiction issues, things like that supersede your wife are good enough reasons in the Bible to divorce, right? If it's that she just wasn't getting along with him, they were fighting a lot, it's just, as much as it's bad, the church isn't going to condone it. So the first thing that's going to happen as a pastor, your wife commits suicide, quote unquote, allegedly, doesn't. I don't believe it. First thing your leadership's going to do be like, you're taking a break. Like we'll get some guest pastors in. You're taking a month, 2 months. You got to figure this out. Are you not sad? Why are you not asking to take time off? Like what's going on here? What kind of leadership structure is in this damn church? And I'd love to tell you what kind of leadership structure is in this damn church. But if you type in the church, Solid Rock Church, Myrtle Beach, okay, it brings up this. I'd love to tell you what kind of church this is and read the website and everything else and tell you what kind of structure they have, what kind of elders they have, But it's when you click it, our leadership, Solid Rock Ministries, Myrtle Beach Church. Like it's taken forever because everybody's trying to do what I'm doing right now. But watch what happens. It's just not working anymore. The site is literally down. The site has been suspended. As you can see here, where is the news? I just saw it. Yeah, see, look, the account has been suspended because of this. So the website developer suspended the website of this church because people are looking for some justice. So let's continue on here. Anyway, I said all that and I had to come back to it. This pastor has no business speaking at church after his wife commits suicide. Okay? No business. And not even if it was true that she did it. This guy's no business being on stage at this moment. I think they have kids.
And your relative says, God, this is amazing. Why would you do this for me? And God says, I love you. But I didn't do this for you. You see, 300 years ago, your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were listening to this.
We respect, we forgive, we give. Like anybody who's come from church like I have and come from this area, I immediately now can walk into a church, and I'm not even kidding you, and hear 1, 2, 3 minutes of a sermon and be like, no. Instantly, I have a gut feeling about pastors because I lived this world by the language, the body language, the way that they talk about giving, anything. I can instantly tell you whether or not this church is legitimate or not. Instantly. And that's a superpower for a lot of people. But instantly, this guy is giving me out the creeps. I mean, I'm obviously biased because I think that he probably did have something to do with his wife, allegedly. So.
Oh, charming.
Oh, there it is. Sorry.
Great-great-great-great-grandparents were listening to this tall, charming, humble.
They're laughing because he's not humble. Do you get the joke? This pastor's like humble. Is he humble?
Pastor, and he told them that if they'll give their life to Christ, that God won't just take care of them, he'll take care of the ones that come after him. And so I love you, but I didn't heal you for your sake. I did it because I promise I made to them 300 years ago.
How many pastors have we seen give these heartfelt messages where people are listening and they're like, but in their other lives, they're living absolute debauchery. Like they're not living it on stage. And again, nobody could. To be honest with you, all the pastors I've ever worked under, except for one, I honestly believed was the real deal. Okay, the rest were liars, and I called them out, and I actually had proof of them lying. And the way the leadership was dealt, they would hurt people and everything else, except for one pastor that I worked under, and he's still the pastor of that church, and is still the most rock solid dude I've ever met. He's been the same forever. Might not be the most exciting guy in the world, but has always been rock solid about his faith and who he is as a person, and a good guy, right? So it's very rare that you find it. First of all, but how many pastors are sitting up there on stage writing these heartfelt words, putting things together because it's their paycheck, right? It's time to start going back to the way the church was supposed to be, the way that Paul envisioned it, the way Jesus left it to Paul and say, here's what you got to do. And I know I'm going to get a little bit theological here in this video because this is something I'm very passionate about. But we need to stop going to mega churches. You need to stop entering your money and your faith and your volunteer hours and everything into mega churches. You got to stop doing it. And the government needs to start taxing mega churches. It's absolutely bananas where the church is in this day and age.
That's what I want you to leave here with. Okay, amen.
Amen. So that's the end of the sermon after he calls himself
good looking. We're not going
to
do an altar call today. Instead, I'm going to have you stand up and I'm going to make an announcement. And
this is, first of all, we know because we have the hindsight that his wife has died, and he just did this, got his applause, and he's like, "Okay, let's stand up." This guy's wife just died.
After the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement here in the building, please, if you can, so y'all can stand here.
Guy, post this on the internet. Idiot.
Why are you having people stand so you can tell them your wife died? That's real weird, dude.
Before I make the announcement, I also want to say that my request to you is that you will continue to come to church and serve and give. for the next, little bit. 'Cause I don't want to I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few.
Can you guys make sure you give some more money while I'm accused of murder? Thanks. Appreciate it. And there's idiots in this church that will. There are idiots in this church that will still go to this after this. Regardless of everything you see here, this guy is absolutely, like, maybe he didn't. I don't know. We're going to find out soon. But, like, even if he didn't kill his wife, and let's just be there, okay? Innocent to proven guilty. His behavior about this whole thing is bananas and should excommunicate you, eliminate you from leadership in a church. Even if he didn't kill her, okay? Let me just say that.
A few days, a few weeks, I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. Yeah.
Listen to the church like, whoa. Because most people are going to process that to be like, what? You just preached the whole sermon and you're like, oh yeah, my wife passed away. That's why people are freaking like, what?
It was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're going to have a funeral for her next Sunday.
Where is this church? Okay, well, let me just finish this. Sorry.
Here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can, I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody.
Pray for his kids for sure. Like, ultimately pray for his kids.
And y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally. And that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her. And so I'm sure there'll be more details to come. But
yeah, there is. The internet, it's about to explode. Already has with this story.
Just keep our family in your prayers. And I'm going to let Pastor Randall, my bishop, he can pray. I'll give him a microphone to pray out. If you have anything you want to share as well, I appreciate it.
Come on, let's pray.
Holy reverb, Batman.
Father God, in the name of Jesus, God, we thank you. We praise you, Lord.
Thanks, God.
Last year, my wife, they went to Africa, had a wonderful trip, amazing trip. And she came back with the idea to start a school in Africa. And 6 weeks ago, she goes in the hospital, gets out, and just leaves. Just completely leaves me, leaves everything, drains the bank account, and goes. And guess what? While you're talking bad about me out there, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids.
Yeah, you're doing a school, not Jesus. Hear this guy. He just said his wife left him, drained the bank account, while you guys are talking bad about me because his wife left him. Because she left him because apparently, allegedly, he's abusive. Right? We're going to get into all this. We have all the articles. We'll read them all out. This guy's a twat. Okay. He does not need to be up in a church. Even if there are allegations and there are multiple of it. Like if there's one allegation of a pastor and it's like, okay, it's not credible. You take into consideration, you do your little thing. The church has to do an investigation and figure, okay, well, this is clearly not credible. But if it's his wife doing it and saying all these things and all this stuff, step back. I don't care if she's right or wrong. You step back, you figure out your family. Because your family is a more important thing. Churches don't give a shit, generally, about family. They don't care. Most mega church pastors and churches and pastors of bigger churches have the shittiest marriages that exist, and they're the shittiest dads that exist. Because they pour their lives into these churches, and they forsake their families. Okay? And that's, again, except for one pastor I've ever worked under, is the same way. Ask a lot of pastors' kids what kind of relationship they have with their dad. Okay? Honestly. Just saying. So he's out there saying this. He's like, I'm building the church in Africa. No, you're not. Your church is giving money and he's claiming that he's doing it. Like, did you pay the money or did you get your congregation to pay the money?
To be fed. I'm just doing that.
Look how he's taking credit for that. Look what I'm doing. Are you telling me that the church here didn't have anything to do with it? That people sitting in those benches and those pews had nothing to do with it? Because if I was in this congregation, I'd be like, excuse me. I tithed extra because you asked me to. I went there too. We're the one giving you money. You're not giving your personal money. Every penny you have in your pocket comes from everybody sitting in that church anyway. So for him to claim that and that he's doing that, that's bullshit.
It's about what I'm preaching about. God is so good to do that every single time. One day I'm preaching about.
I couldn't listen to this guy's voice for more than 10 seconds. I'd be like, okay, bye. I'm going to get a coffee and I'm leaving. Then you do the old, I gotta go to the bathroom, and then you just like, you ditch it.
Getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus. That's what I'm going to do. Weird.
Here, listen to what he just said.
One day I'm going to preach about getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus.
So that's one thing I'm going to preach about is getting rich and healthy and finding a hot wife. These pastors like Mark Driscoll and all these guys who get up there and talk about sex and everything else and their personal lives and how hot their wives are. You think Jesus is cool with that? You honestly think that that's like, how many youth pastors, people who've gone to church, hands up, okay? How many youth pastors you ever heard talk about how hot their wife is and how like sex and how like to kids, like teenagers, like how many, like I can count it on two hands because that's how many youth pastors I know. Like pastors in general of large churches, for some reason, they do this. They flex about how hot their wives are. They overcompensate about how good their relationships are with their wives because they're not. Because that's the thing, they're not. If you're a pastor of a high-level church, there is no, I'm going to say it out loud, just like exploitation of children. There's no way you can be a good person. Or there's no way you can be a good parent or husband. Can't do it. And I know this because I gave my 7 years of my life to my church. It's very rare. And my church, even though I asked to step back so they could spend more time with the family, they denied it. Because I saw during that 7 years, or during that last 3 years, it was the major point when I worked at a big church. My first couple years at a small church wasn't a big deal because it was a tiny church and it wasn't a big giant church, and it was easy to balance. But large churches, almost impossible to balance being a high-level pastor and a father. I'm telling you, it's almost impossible.
That's what I'm going to do.
If you're good at it, is what I'm saying.
Weird. There's a really weird idea that a lot of women have. It's so weird that women have this. Christian women think, well, I need somebody to talk to about these people that hurt me. I need somebody to talk to. Oh, you just want to talk about somebody else. That's a demon, actually, right there.
Women want to talk about stuff that's a demon. That's nice. So women want to talk, it's demonic. This guy's holy shit. How did this guy become a pastor?
The hospital, I looked at her phone and I counted over the past 2 years, 18 people who had texted her and said, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and say anything and I'll keep it confidential.
He is saying this out loud. Here, I don't know if you can, because the stupid music's behind this thing, but he went through his wife's phone and said 18 people reached out to her and said, if you need to talk to me about your husband, I'll keep it confidential. 18 people. 18. That's not story one. That's not her mom. That's not her sister or friend at church. 18 strangers. Maybe not. 18 people. And he's all like, oh, no, that's demonic. Clearly, they're worried about her, dude. And this is just obviously lining up in the wormhole that we're going down here. That many people were worried for her, and then she ends up dead? Okay, that's red flag in it.
If you could go back in time, you would have said this. Or if I see them again, I'm going to say that. And it starts festering and gets bigger and bigger. By the time you're done, you want to shoot them with a bazooka, right? And all I said was, are those? Did you intentionally wear those shoes with that dress? Oh, get rid of them!
So, future episode of Dateline. So here's an article from New York Post. South Carolina pastor husband claims wife died of suicide as family urges police to deeply investigate the death. So I want to do something quickly here. I want to find out. So obviously the count's doesn't work. Just putting that out there. Hour and 44-minute drive. It's not like it's super far away. Pretty close, actually, is what I'm saying. We're going to be doing some lives on this. A South Carolina pastor claimed his wife died of suicide Saturday, 6 months after she filed for divorce, as her family pleaded for police to deeply investigate the sudden death. Mica Miller, 30, was found to have suffered a fatal gunshot to the head at Lumber River State Park in Lumberton, North Carolina. There it is, Lumber River. Let's see how far that is. Let's just do our due diligence here. Well, a little closer. Hour 30 minutes. Okay, Miller's husband, John Paul Miller, is the pastor at Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, who broke the news of her death during a recent service after asking his congregation not to discuss it inside the church. Have you ever been to a church, bro? Do you know how many gossip hounds are in churches? You think the snark and gossip threads on Reddit are crazy? Go to a church. Just saying. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. It was self-induced and was up in North Carolina, Miller said before sharing the details of her planned memorial service. Now, he's likely got, it's going to, once it comes out what this guy's alibi is going to be very fishy, right? It's fishy already, but I'm very interested to know his alibi. I'm interested to know if there's somebody that he might have paid to do it, or if she actually did it. And I guess the police investigation hopefully will come into thing. There's going to be footage, because this is going viral. There's going to be people just like the Gabby Petito case that are going to be pulling up cameras. There's going to be cameras pulled from everywhere. Was he? Who else drove into the park with her? Like, this is a case that nobody believes she killed herself, and we don't even really know her. The family in general, who knows her very well, all believe that it's fishy what happened. Okay? She tried to file for divorce. She took his money, and he's got a reputation to protect at a church where he's the only place he's going to make money. Right? She divorces him and comes out with a story about what he's like. He's not going to get another job anywhere else. Well, you never know. But, you know what I mean? He's going to be tainted. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to lose on this guy's end. Before sharing the details of her planned memorial service, y'all pray for me and my kids, and everybody knew she wasn't well mentally, and she needed medicine that was hard to get to her. I'm sure there will be more details to come, but keep her family in your prayers. Friends of the pastor's late second wife were taken aback over Mica Miller's death and urged officials to look into it deeply. This has to be at least looked into deeply. There's got to be some accountability here. Because, yeah, a tragic life was lost, and it's not just as simple as mental health issues. Mica Miller's death comes as the Robeson County Sheriff, or Robeson, sorry, I don't know what it is, opens an investigation into the April 27th shooting. Officers are in the process of gathering information from people in North Carolina as part of their investigation into how Miller died. Major Damian McLean told the outlet. Oh, he looks just like a skivvy little conniving. McLean revealed that there was no indication of the community being in danger. She had struggled with suicide before. Each time, we would help her through it and take her to the doctor, and we got through it, and everything was fine. She even gave a few testimonies here at the church that we have on video, John Paul said. She battled suicide, but God took care of her and got her through it. So there's probably video of it, and they're gathering that so they can make sure that they have that out there. As the pastor claims, he and his wife spent every night together for hours just talking and talking. Mica Miller filed for divorce from her husband on October 2023, according to court records. The case was dismissed in February, but a few days later, John Paul Miller filed for separate support and maintenance, seeking financial support as the couple were still legally married. Why was it dismissed? In April, Mica Miller also filed for separate support and maintenance, with a hearing scheduled for June 5th. Just so you're aware, June 5th is coming up soon, guys. Okay? Fishy AF much? Why would she file it and go and get ready for court and then off herself before she gets her chance to fight? Her family is seeking justice for Mica, as they claim. No contact order and divorce was filed days before her death. No contact order was filed days before the death. Ordering the defendant not to contact you by telephone, written communication, or electronic means. Ordering the defendant to refrain from entering or remaining present at your residence, school, place of employment, or others. So basically, it's don't come near me, don't contact me. She filed that. That's fishy. We are devastated, prayers appreciated. There's a lot of talk already going on, so I want to set the record straight. Our sister Mica Miller passed away yesterday. Please do not listen to false stories being shared about her. Mica Miller's sister Savannah shared on Facebook. Mica was a God-fearing, joyful, loving woman who did not deserve the abuse she endured. If you hear anything about this from anyone other than her family, please question it. Reach out to her siblings or parents. Keep our family in your prayers. And if you have any information that needs to be shared, please contact one of us. Please respect us in this time and honor her memory with joy that she is no longer suffering. Mica Miller was remembered as energetic and adventurous, and she met her husband in 2009, and the two married in 2017. She was 14 when they met, and he was 30. Beautiful soul gone. Kansas native Mica was a worship leader, graphics designer, youth leader, women's ministry leader, and pastor assistant. Welcome to church, everybody. One of Mica Miller's final Facebook posts, including her smiling in a selfie with an eerie caption. When terrible, terrible, terrible things happen to you, y'all know what I'm talking about. Rest in peace, face. Rest in peace, face. She wrote that April 9th. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. There's a lot of talk already going on, so I want to set the record straight. Our sister Mica, I read that, okay. She was a worship leader of a modern church. Hey, I have this guitar. Obviously, wow, that's crazy. She survived by her husband, siblings, and 5 stepchildren. Well, I don't think she survived by her husband. And I'm not saying that to be joking. I'm saying, I honestly believe this guy has something to do with it. Why are you filing a no contact order? Robbie Harvey writes this in Twitter. Mica Miller timeline of events. Here it goes. February 4th, Pastor John Paul preaches a sermon on Korah and Moses and how it's wrong to rise against religious leaders. So this is the issue with it. This guy who's listening to all this stuff, it's very, very important. This guy, it sounds like he's setting up something. When a preacher or anybody gets up in front of a church and they do a sermon where it's specifically, hey guys, don't rise up against the church, don't rise up against leadership, submit to leadership, all those kinds of things that come into those topics, you gotta friggin' dig a little deeper. And I'm just not just about this church, but any church. As soon as a pastor starts preaching on accountability and being submissive to leadership and not questioning leadership and that it's a sin to do all that stuff, something definitely is going on in the back end. Someone's being fired illegally, someone's being let go, there's some kind of essay happening, something has happened, okay? Churches are very good at this stuff. And I'm telling you this as a pastor, ex-pastor. If there's something coming up, the sermons will absolutely be directed towards that thing, whether it's fundraising, missions trips, raising things for the community, mostly about money things, but it's always has something to do with money. And it's like the sermon should never be about you raising money for your church. Ever, ever, ever. Okay? But it's all directed. If something's going on in the community, they're going to do a sermon about it. If something bad happened in the church, there's going to be definitely multiple sermons happening about that topic on the outskirts of, in the peripheral of it. Okay? It happens all the time. It's a common practice in a lot of churches. February 23rd, Pastor John Paul files for spousal support. February 25th, in another sermon to his congregation, Pastor John Paul says a mentally ill person doesn't know they're sick. You have to trust people around you. The thing that's sick is your mind, and your mind is what you need to realize you're sick. So again, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, and I think a lot of people believe this, he's setting these things up so that he can place the thing. And so look at my sermon. She was sick then. I was talking about it then. She's mentally ill. He's setting this up so that people don't question it when it does happen. That's what my opinion is. March 10th, Pastor John Paul preached a sermon and reveals he went through 2 years of messages on his wife's phone. He found that 18 people reached out saying to her, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and I'll keep it confidential. Visibly upset, the pastor followed up with, that's a demon talking. We saw that. March 10th, Pastor John Paul says to, why are you airing out your dirty marriage laundry on stage? No pastor should ever do this, by the way, ever. It's nobody's business that you're airing out her issues, if they are her issues, or your issues. Now, I understand pastors talking about their life a little bit. I get that. My kid did this. It's funny. My wife and I did this. I understand that. But the dirty laundry, don't do that. March 10th, he preaches and says, one thing I'm going to preach about is getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus while wearing his wedding ring. March 10th, Pastor John Paul tells his congregation that his wife was in the hospital, and as soon as she got out, she left him. She gets out and she just leaves. She just completely leaves me. Leaves everything, drains the bank account, and just goes. Guess what? While you're talking bad about me out there, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids, and we talked about that, how that's not him building the school in Africa. That's the church. Asshole. March 17th, Pastor John Paul tells the story of a pastor whose wife left him for a member of his staff. The pastor had to hire a third-party company to find her. Once he found her, divorce papers were drawn up. Then the time came to sign the papers. The pastor couldn't do it because the Bible says divorce is wrong. And if she wanted out, she would have to leave him. This is crazy that he's saying all these things. And this is in the last couple of months. March 12th, Pastor John Paul request for spousal support was dismissed. There's no explanation as to why. March 17th, in a Facebook post made by Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, says she keeps an eye on her phone for real. For fear of my sister's safety due to other behaviors towards her. She goes on to mention the sermon from March 17th and calls it the congregation of Solid Rock Church. Look at this. She posts this March 18th. When the narcissist says my ex is crazy, they mean to say I gaslight daily, I cheated repeatedly, I lied pathologically, I manipulate emotionally, I bankrupt them financially. This sister knew something was coming down the pike. I was sitting in church today. I received a text message. Usually I don't check my phone and I keep it on silent, but with everything going on with my sister Mica, I've made it a point to try to keep an eye on it for fear of her safety due to others' behavior towards her. To no surprise, it was a message about her that was said from the pulpit today in Myrtle Beach at her church. I have so much sadness, and someone could take the position that was hopefully given to them by God and use it for their own benefit, abusing God's gift of free will. Please hear my heart when I say, if you attend that church, guard your heart and get in the Bible. The church is the people in God, not the pastor. Amen. When the pastor is married and he's on stage giving a sermon saying he's going to pray to God for a hot wife, that should raise a million red flags. When a pastor on stage is in a sermon saying he's going to wave to all his Facebook haters in his private plane on the way to Miami, that should raise a red flag. When the pastor is up there saying that he's angry at God for always making his sermons about what he's going through in his life, you should take that as a red flag. When the pastor is saying he shouldn't be up there preaching to you, you should hear what he's saying and take it seriously. I can only imagine how emotionally straining it is for Mica having someone in a position of influence spreading lies about her to the entire congregation. And this is powerful inside of a church, especially if your friends are inside that church. And that's what happened to us. And I commend my sister for standing tall and standing on God's word. Please do not fall for the BS being shared about my sister needing restoration, healing, and forgiveness. Narcissists working publicly with no accountability is insane. Wow. That's super scary. Okay. Here's another article. This is really weird, but South Carolina pastor John Paul Miller's alleged girlfriend's husband drowned in a community pool in 2021. Listen to this title. John Paul Miller's alleged girlfriend's husband. Wow. The story around South Carolina pastor John Paul Miller and his late wife Mica Miller keeps getting more twisted and sadder. Previously, I reported that John Paul had an alleged girlfriend. Let's take a closer look. Internet sleuth Robbie Harvey reported that John Paul was dating Susie Skinner while still being married but separated from Mica. Well, Skinner's husband, Chris Skinner, passed away 3 years ago in 2021. It was officially ruled as an accidental drowning. Chris Skinner was paralyzed in a wheelchair after an accident. He became a motivational speaker and was good friends with Marty Smith, touching the hearts of several county singers like Cole Swindle. Harvey said there's something disturbing that the pastor and Susie Skinner have in common. Susie Skinner's former husband, Chris Skinner, died from a drowning accident. Chris had a tragic accident some 20 years ago that left him bound in a wheelchair, but he adapted and lived a beautiful life. This guy's wife cheated on her husband in a wheelchair with this crappy pastor? What? According to Susie, he enjoyed going to the community pool often by himself. On Labor Day 2021, Chris did just that, but apparently something went terribly wrong. According to reports, Chris got too close to the pool with his wheelchair and fell in with nobody around to save him. Nobody was around? In a public pool? Reportedly, Chris Skinner was a regular at the community pool. Somehow on Labor Day, Chris misjudged how close he was to the pool and fell in. Guess who conducted his funeral? John Paul conducted the funeral for Skinner. And then dated his wife? Now I want to stress that this does not mean that Chris's death was anything rather than accidental. All this is just circumstantial. John Paul Miller's announced his wife passing. John Paul announced that his wife, Mica, had passed away. He believes that she died by suicide. She had struggled with suicide before. Each time we would help her through it and take her to the doctor, blah, blah, blah. We already saw that. That's crazy. Here's another article. Afraid of her life. Reports detail harassment at Mica Miller's death. So look at this. This is from 15 News. There's an ongoing investigation into the death of Myrtle Beach woman who was found dead in Robeson County last week. An ABC 15 request reports from the Horry County Police Department that listed 30-year-old Mica Miller as the victim. HCPD sent 2 reports for March 11th. According to the documents, Miller reported to police that a razor blade was placed in her tire at the Spring-Made Pier. She claimed this was the second time a razor had deflated her tire within that week. The report said that, a razor can be put in a tire and not pushed in until you drive a little bit too, by the way. So it doesn't necessarily have to be done at the pier. It could have been done at home or somewhere like that. And then as you drive, it can flatten your tire slowly. And then it could be flat. And you're like, oh, there's a razor in here. So it doesn't necessarily mean it happened at the pier. She claimed this was the second time a razor deflated her tire within that week. The report said as Miller was leaving the pier, she heard a pop and noticed a metal protruding from her tire. The responding officer said the metal was a tire deflation device that could be bought online. So it was a tire deflation device. Miller believed the suspect, whose name is redacted in the report, may have placed or had item placed on her tire. The report, why is the suspect redacted? The report stated that Miller noticed strange activity and believed people were following or watching her. She's trusting her gut on this, by the way. And I think she told her sister that. And she clearly told her sister that this is all going on and then ends up dead. Can you imagine? Miller told police that the unidentified suspect had a history of similar actions against her. Who's this person? Police stated that the evidence was not sufficient enough to prove that the suspect had placed the razor device under the tire. Later that same morning, another officer responded to the East Coast Honda dealership. Let me just stop this for a second. When you try to pop a tire while someone's driving, you could die from that, by the way. Like, I know it's rare, but if you're driving fast enough and hit a bump or whatever, your tire could fall off. You could flip a car, right? That's really, really dangerous to do. Later that morning, another officer responded to the East Coast Honda dealership. The officer spoke with Miller, who advised that after another officer helping change her tire, she went to the gas station and then straight to the Honda dealership to get her tire fixed. Miller said that while at the gas station, the suspect in the incident pulled up next to her pump trying to talk to her. She told him to go away and that she did not want to talk, per her report. When she pulled out her phone to record, the suspect reportedly sped off. Miller left the gas station to go back to East Coast Honda, where the suspect also showed up, according to the police report. This is getting crazy. Does this suspect, and I wonder if it's going to come out soon, is he related to her husband? Like, not related as a family, but like, are they connected? While an officer was standing with Miller, she received a no-caller ID call, which ended up being the suspect. The officer noted in the report the suspect was advised that the victim does not want any further contact, and if it proceeds, then warrants may be written up. The suspect acknowledged the advisory, police said. Damn, who is this guy? The victim told police officers she was afraid for her life. There it is, in a report. She also said that she blocked the suspect's number and would still get calls and texts from him on other numbers. After the officer left, Miller contacted him to say the mechanics found a tracking device in her vehicle. There's too much going on here that we're going to believe that she killed herself. Why are you tracking her? Why are her tires being popped? What's going on? Who is this stranger? Why is this person redacted? And I hope it comes out soon who this guy is. But an hour later, Miller also notified the officer that she was at the magistrate's office to get a restraining order. The officer requested to meet her to get the GPS device, to which Miller agreed. While out front of the magistrate's office with Miller, the officer saw a white Honda Accord slowly drive by, and Miller said it was a suspect in her car driving by. In her car. Is this the girlfriend of the guy in the wheelchair? Or the wife of the guy in the wheelchair? Is this her? Is it a girl? The vehicle then sped up and drove away, the report concluded. On Thursday of last week, the Robeson County Sheriff's Office... And hold on. Does that mean that is Susie Skinner? Who is Susie Skinner?
What happened?
All right, we'll get back to that because this is crazy. This is like, whoa. On Thursday of last week, the Robeson County Sheriff's Office said they'd started an investigation at Lumber where she died to determine the cause of her death. Court documents show divorce proceedings were underway between the couple. Friends and family had held a rally Sunday out front of Solid Rock Church calling for justice for Mica. Mica's family also held a memorial service Sunday afternoon, and the same time memorial service hosted by Mica's estranged husband was held at Solid Rock Church. And here's that. This is by JLR Investigates.
In Solid Rock Church, you know, folks, there's also another church in
Justice for Mica! Now! Justice for Mica!
This is getting crazy, and this church is going to have to be like, no, he's not here anymore. We're totally excommunicating. He's not back here anymore. This church. Don't forget the leadership in this church, and I wish I could tell you what the leadership structure was like. They propped this guy up, even knowing all the problematic stuff he had going on. Right? They're the ones who let him keep doing this. Pastors aren't like kings of churches, even though they sort of are. They still have to answer to the leadership. Churches who are structured this way have elders. Elders are allowed to hold pastors accountable. Pastors don't just get away with everything, you know. Sometimes they do, and elders help them. But you know what I mean? There is a structure set up supposedly biblically that is in there for checks and balances for bad pastors, bad leaderships, all those kinds of things. Rarely happens, but it's there. So they knew this. And so every single person in this church that's on a leadership position and knew about this guy and didn't speak out should be removed from this church and this congregation.
When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice for Mica! When do we want it? Now!
This is going on during church, and I bet you this is going to continue to happen every Sunday. I wish more people would do this for lots of churches that deserve it. Okay? So let's watch this one here. Who is Mica? Let's see who is Susie Skinner.
What happens when bad people hide behind religion? Exhibit A. Now, what I'm about to share with you, I cannot tell you that this is fact in any way, except that the man in these photographs, John Paul Miller, was the husband that Mica Miller was separating and divorcing from, and even filing
Nice shirt, bro.
a no contact order of days before she found in the park. Now, if what John Paul Miller is saying about Mica taking her own life, if that's true, him and the woman in these photographs, Susie, have something in common. It is circulating in the rumor mill that Susie's late husband, Christopher, he had lost his life. He was bound to a wheelchair, but it absolutely did not hold this man back because he was such a motivational speaker and really impacted so many people. Christopher had taken his life also by drowning in a pool. And
That's not what I read, though. What I read was he fell into the pool by accident. So I don't know where... Okay.
I cannot tell you that this is true, and I'm not trying to start any type of fire here, but Pastor Red Flag, he's got a lot of them. You got Mica's family speaking out, telling the public, don't listen to false information. The only person putting out information out there is former husband, the man that she was separating from, the man that it seems like...
The man who has the platform.
She finally found her voice and was breaking free days after a no-contact order and serving divorce papers. And regardless, a spouse in mourning, you look pretty cozy with this woman in these photographs.
Agreed. Is this after the death?
They're
laughing about it?
Legs are practically touching. You're going out to dinner together alone and seen in multiple occasions. And I'm sorry to bring up Chad and Lori Daybell if you missed that in the beginning. But what happens when bad people hide behind religion? Because I feel like they are the prime example.
Wow. Who is Susie Skinner? There's a lot. This wormhole is exploding right now.
The man in these photographs, that's J.P. Miller. That's the man that Mica Miller, who is recently found deceased, claimed to have been by self-infliction.
If her name is Mica, I apologize for mispronouncing Mica. Mica Miller.
According to this guy, whom she was serving no contact order to and serving divorce papers to prior to her being found in the park. The authorities haven't said anything except that this is an open investigation. Well, Susie, and he's seen out with, if Susie were to speak. Well, looks like she has. Let's see what she said. He is my friend. His wife died 4 days ago, and he had no one to eat with.
So you're going to go out and laugh about it? He's your friend, eh? Where was she the night this all happened? Where was she? That's what I want to know. You don't just go out with another woman after your wife. Again, you don't preach a sermon. You don't get up there and disparage her. You don't go on other dates with women while you're done, while this is all going on. Like, optics matter too. Let's say they were separate, he was dating. Optics still matter in a church. It matters. It absolutely matters.
He asked some people to sit with him, but no one could go. So when he asked if I could go, I went.
To the movies?
Been friends for years. It wasn't a date. People also said he unalived his wife, but we think she called the police before she did that and said she brought a pium pium and wanted to unalive herself and wanted to make sure that they could ping her phone so her family could find her.
This is what Susie is saying? Like, that sounds like you know way more than you should know. Do you know what I mean? That's really eerie to me. What the hell is going on?
This is from the nurse at the hospital. Then she did it. She has attempted this before. She's schizophrenic, bipolar, and has personality disorder. Why are you, Susie, the friend to the pastor, so comfortable saying and speaking about a woman who's no longer here like that? Susie claims that Mica put herself off medication starting in December against her doctor's orders and JP's wishes, and even texted her family to tell them she was doing it. This is the longest she's been off of lithium since being diagnosed in 2017. A few weeks ago, she threw her belt out of the car while driving on the highway because she thought it was a snake. She was recently playing chess alone and talking to herself, and when they asked her what she was doing, she said playing chess with the demon. She was very, not extremely mentally...
Why are you disparaging this woman after death? Like, again, they're saying too, like, they're doing too much, right? They're doing too much and trying to paint a picture. Well, why? If this woman had problems like this, why are you painting this picture? The only reason, in my opinion, that you would paint a picture like this is because you're guilty. And you're trying to put her down and disparage her so it makes you look like more innocent. That's all they're trying to do this for. Otherwise, shut your damn mouth about the dead.
Ill, and the people who post things like this on social media haven't spoken to her or JP in years. They were part of his first church that ended in 2015, so none of that is what people make it look like. No one should be that comfortable speaking about a woman who's no longer here, except you, Susie, feel like you have to justify...
And it's like they're out more than once. They're out at a dinner, they're out at the movies, they're out at this other place. It's like more than one place, multiple outfits, not just hanging out with this dude.
These photographs, and it bothers you so much so what people are rumoring to say that you have to go so deep into detail, which shows how close you must be to your friend JP Miller, the pastor. The man in these photos...
Damn, man. Sorry, I get back to this timeline. I veered out of this timeline. Michael told me that, so Sierra Francis says this. This is Sierra. Prior to admission to walk, in February 22, Mr. Miller removed my sister's personal... Okay, so this is another tweet. I had to get back to this one, sorry. So we're still in the timeline here. Mica posted a video encouraging others. She says, I'm making sure my heart doesn't have any unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, and just forgiveness and hope for the future. March 22nd, Mica posts another video suggesting she was being abused physically and mentally. She also says God hates divorce, but how does God feel about abuse? Again, if your husband's abusing you, you can divorce him. God's cool with it. She also suggests her husband forced her to take illegal drugs. Mica files for spousal support. April 23rd, a hearing notice was sent out for Mica's request. A court date, June 5th, was set. April 27th, 4 days later, Mica is found dead. April 28th, Pastor John announces his congregation that at the end of service, his wife is dead and it was self-induced. He also reminds the congregation of her mental illness and says don't talk about it. Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, posted on Facebook saying don't listen to the false stories being told about her. In an interview with ABC 15, Pastor John Paul Miller says she was probably the greatest wife anyone could ask for on May 2nd. He also once again pointed out her mental illness. What a douche. All right, so here's the other one. There's a lot here. Just want to get it all out so we can get caught up. Breaking. According to affidavits submitted on May 2, 2024, Sierra and Nathan Francis, the brother and sister of Micah Miller, revealed shocking details. Sierra Francis says this: I know my sister to have expressed the abuse and violence against her by her husband to others, including family members and members of the church congregation, including probably those 18 people that texted her that he told the church of. Whoopsie doodle. What an idiot. Micah told me that there was more people following her. Micah told me that there were people following her, keeping track of where she went. She thought that Mr. Miller hired people to follow her. Mr. Miller later confirmed this during a sermon I watched. Micah confided in me that Mr. Miller was moving her assets that were in his name, such as his vehicle, changing the deeds of their house into the church. Deed to the church? What? In February 2023, Mr. Miller removed my sister's personal items from the home they shared while she was admitted to Waccamaw Mental Health Facility and left them at the apartment of name redacted. My sister was not aware that her personal possessions had been removed from her residence until she was released from the hospital. Prior to admission to Waccamaw, Micah was gathering and sorting the evidence she had to bring to an attorney for filing for divorce. To support her claims against Mr. Miller, and as to this abuse character, his paramours and associates to be paid off or blackmailed. While at the facility, those documents, emails, files were removed from her phone, personal laptop, vehicle, and purse, and never recovered. Holy! Further, Micah was unable to access her iCloud account, email, or Facebook profile. That's hacking. Mr. Miller continued to use at least one of Micah's accounts, causing any recipient to believe it was Micah's communication. So he's stealing her identity, locking her out of her stuff, and acting like her in communications. It's going to be very important to understand and to see what those communications were. My sister also expressed that she was fearful that she would not make it to the divorce and that her life would be taken from her. It is my belief, based on conversations with my sister, that she told multiple people, including other family members. Micah stated to me on many occasions, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not by me, it was JP. Micah forwarded a family group text message notifying us that Mr. Miller was served divorce papers on April 25th, 2024. Nathan Francis says this: I was also a member of Solid Rock Church, where both John Paul and Micah worked for several years until I left the congregation due to the behaviors I observed. Micah made several reports of the last few weeks of her tires being slashed, tracking devices being found in her car, and Mr. Miller's email forwarded to me. He apologized to Micah for the tires and causing damage to her vehicle. What? Let's read that again. Micah made several reports of the last few weeks of her tires being slashed and tracking devices being found in her car. In Mr. Miller's email forwarded to me, he apologizes to Micah for the tires and causing damage to her vehicle. But in the report, the news report we just said, it was a girl in a white vehicle that was driving by. Right? Unless they just misprinted. Mr. Miller's email to my sister continued to state that he was angry when Micah confided or put her family before him, and that made him want to hurt her. In his words, when someone hurts me, I try to hurt them back rather than forgive. And instead of me forgiving you, I just attack and try to cause pain. Micah told me on numerous occasions that she fears John Paul and just wanted to escape him. Wow. Do the police have anything scheduled, or have they commented? They have not. The only thing being said is they're investigating. Considering how much there is, it will take time. The longer it takes, in my opinion, it's not considered a suicide. True. That's a good point, actually. Wow. This is crazy. Here it is. Update 3 minutes ago. John Paul Miller has been released as pastor of his church. Like I said, the evidence usually points in only one direction. Another potential shoe about to drop. Wow. Okay. So he's out as of right now. The obit is creepy. I've read a lot of obits. This is from Liz Farrell. I've read a lot of obits in my career, like a lot, and I've never seen anything as chilling as this one, specifically the highlighted lines. This feels like it was lifted right out of a psycho thriller. Here it is. Micah Miller obituary. Micah Acacia Miller, 30 of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, passed away on Saturday, April 27th. She was born March 17, Wichita, Kansas, daughter of Michael Francis and Angela Ramirez. She is survived by her husband, Pastor John Paul Miller, Myrtle Beach, stepchildren. Okay. Logan, Zachary, Eli, Asher, and Selah. Church names. One brother, Nate Francis, and his wife, Victoria. 4 sisters, Anna Francis, blah, blah, blah. She would praise her husband after every church service, telling him he was the best preacher in the world, even if it wasn't true. She also told him he was the funniest preacher in the world, even though it wasn't true either. Micah loved her family so much. This is something that was written for her by her husband. What? That's weird. So was the story I hear that he owned the church and the ground it sits on incorrect, or did he allow himself to be released pending the investigation? Interesting question. All right, so we're going to continue to follow this case for sure. But let's just quickly recap this for people who are like recaps. First of all, this guy met this girl when she was 14 years old and he was way older, I think 17 years older. Okay? That's crazy. Likely a youth pastor or some type of leadership inside of a church that met her and groomed her to be his wife. That happens more than I think churches would ever admit. It happens a lot where youth pastors will start falling in love with a girl, groom her to be that, wait till she turns 18 and marry her. It happens way more than you know. Okay? First of all, if that ever happens, you failed as a parent. Okay? If you let your 16-year-old, 14-year-old daughter become emotionally invested in a man, an adult male at a church and leadership, there's something wrong with you. Okay? Get your kid out of that church ASAP if that starts happening. Okay? Because these pastors have a lot of power over people. And again, I'm an ugly potato. And as a pastor, I can tell you many times about things that have happened, about being approached in ways that were very inappropriate. Because for some reason, certain women and men, for that matter, like people in power, right? And these people are in power, and they're in power over these kids. And these kids see them on stage preaching and being energetic and all that stuff, and they idolize them. It's like they're like famous people. Okay? So that's really creepy, first of all. That automatically, if you were a pastor who groomed a young bride to be your girl, and as soon as she's legally allowed to marry, you married her, you should not be in a church. Okay? You're a pedophile. Understand that? That should never go on. Second, this guy was leading up to this, placing strategically, in my opinion, in his sermons, things that would disparage his wife and lead people to believe that, okay, it's just, it's like he's setting it up so that when it happened, people are like, oh yeah, he said it was going to happen. That's what it looks like to me. The Susie thing, that shit's going to hit the fan pretty soon. Something's going on with the Susie thing. So even if he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, it sounds like something else happened. Okay? The tracking devices, the razor blades, all that stuff doesn't add up to someone just going and like, she was scared. She told her sister she wasn't going to kill herself. And if she did, it was going to be JP who did it. Okay? There's too much going on here. This is super shady. And the church just released him. So this is getting crazy, and we are going to follow it here on Real Crime with the Dad Challenge Podcast. Okay, everybody take a deep breath with me. Churches. Freaking churches. Ugh. Don't get me started. We've already started. Anyway, thank you for being here for these conversations. As we follow this, we'll keep updated on it. We'll do some lives on this because it's very good to open up the conversation. I know I call it Real Crime. I call it Real Crime, but I do an open source, crowdsourced conversation about this, and I let everybody have their kind of say in there, and we talk about it and we hash it out. And I think that's one of the most important things to do in these types of things. A lot of people have some things that I didn't even think of, that you didn't even think of. Some people wanted like, hey, is this possible? And we're like, it's not very possible, right? And so we're going to be doing that. This case is just starting, and in my opinion, this guy is shady AF and needs to be held accountable for everything he did, even if he didn't kill his wife. Okay? Leading everything he's done up to this point, he needs to be held accountable. Okay? I'll see you when I see you.